You're not bored material. Stay home. I read the message 3 times before my brain could process what my eyes were seeing. Not a phone call, not a meeting. Just 7 words sent at 9:43 on a Thursday night, like he was telling me to pick up printer paper. 7 words that erased everything I'd built. I was sitting in my apartment, still in the clothes I'd worn for 16 hours straight, reviewing the quarterly projections that would be discussed at the retreat. The retreat I'd been preparing for. The retreat where I was supposed to present the expansion model I'd spent 4 months developing. My thumbs hovered over the keyboard. I could feel my heartbeat in my fingertips. Not from panic, from something colder. I typed, understood, sent it. Then I opened my banking portal and pulled up the documents I'd signed 3 years and 2 months ago. Most people don't know how investment firms actually survive when they're drowning. They don't know about the gaps between what banks will lend and what companies actually need. They don't know about personal guarantees, about using family assets as collateral, about the invisible architecture that holds up buildings everyone thinks are solid. I knew, because I'd been that architecture, and I was about to remove every supporting beam. But before I go any further into what happened next, I need to pause here, because if this story is hitting you the way it's hitting me right now, do me a favor. Tap that like button. Drop a comment telling me if you've ever been made invisible by someone who couldn't succeed without you. And subscribe, because what comes next is the kind of story that doesn't get told enough. The story of what happens when the person holding everything together finally lets go. Thank you for being here. Now let me tell you exactly who I am and how I ended up holding the keys to someone else's kingdom. My name is Pharaoh, not a name you forget easily, which is exactly why my mother chose it. She wanted me to be unforgettable in rooms where women like us were supposed to blend into the furniture. I grew up watching my grandmother build something from nothing. She started with a single textile loom in a warehouse space she rented for almost nothing. 43 years later, she owned the building, the block, and had a trust fund that made banks sit up straight when they heard our family name. She taught me something most people never learn. Money isn't about how much you have, it's about how much you can leverage. I studied finance at a state school nobody's heard of, graduated with honors nobody cared about. Spent 5 years at regional firms where I learned the actual work while everyone else learned how to take credit for it. Then I met Caspian. That's what the CEO called himself, not a nickname, his actual legal name. His mother had been obsessed with the sea, apparently, and decided her son should sound like a luxury resort. He had the kind of charisma that made people forget to ask questions. Tall, with silver hair he'd gone prematurely gray at 35 and decided to lean into. He wore suits that cost more than most people's monthly rent and spoke about market trends like he was narrating poetry. When I met him, his investment firm was 3 months from total collapse. He'd started the company 7 years earlier with family money and big promises. He'd attracted clients through charm and confidence, convinced them he had secret strategies, revolutionary approaches. What he actually had was luck and timing. He'd made some good calls early on, riding waves that any competent analyst could have caught. But when the market shifted, when luck ran out, he didn't have the skills to adapt. His board was a collection of old college friends and distant relatives who knew even less than he did. They'd been hemorrhaging clients for 8 months. 3 of their biggest accounts had pulled out completely. The rest were asking pointed questions about returns that kept shrinking. Caspian needed someone who actually understood financial architecture. Someone who could rebuild the foundation while he kept smiling at investors and telling them everything was fine. He found me through a mutual contact, invited me to lunch at a restaurant where the menu didn't list prices, spent 2 hours telling me about his vision, his plans, his absolute certainty that the firm just needed the right restructuring. "I need someone brilliant," he said, leaning forward like we were conspirators. "Someone who sees the solutions everyone else misses." I told him I'd need to review their complete financial records before making any decisions. He had them couriered to my apartment that night. I spent 3 days going through everything. The picture was worse than I'd expected. They weren't just losing money on bad investments. They had a structural problem. Their entire operation was built on credit they couldn't sustain. They'd been using short-term loans to cover long-term obligations, and the banks were starting to notice. I called Caspian and gave him the assessment. "You're 6 weeks from defaulting on your primary credit line. Your collateral is overextended. No bank is going to refinance you with these numbers." Silence on his end. "Unless," I continued, You completely restructure your funding model. You need a personal guarantee from someone with actual assets. You need to consolidate your debt under a single facility with better terms. And you need someone who can manage it properly. Can you do that? His voice had lost all its smoothness. I can, but it's going to cost you. Name your price, equity, 5% of the firm, and full authority over financial operations. He agreed within an hour. I should have known then. Should have recognized that someone who agrees that quickly is either desperate or planning to renegotiate later. But I was 31 years old and someone was finally offering me real authority. So I signed. The restructuring took 6 months of the hardest work I'd ever done. I started by going to my family's bank, the one that had held my grandmother's trust for 4 decades. I met with the senior loan officer, a woman named Bellamy who'd known my grandmother personally. I need to use the trust as collateral for a commercial credit facility, I told her. Bellamy's expression didn't change, but I saw her fingers tighten on her pen. How much? 1.5 million. For what company? I explained the situation, showed her my restructuring plan, demonstrated how I'd secured equity and authority in exchange. She reviewed everything for 3 days. Then she called me back to her office. Your grandmother built that trust by never taking unnecessary risks, Bellamy said. This isn't unnecessary. This is calculated. Your grandmother would ask why you trust this CEO. I don't trust him. I trust my own ability to manage the facility properly. Bellamy studied me for a long moment. If this goes wrong, you understand what you're risking. Everything. Yes, I understand. She approved the facility. The paperwork took 2 weeks. I read every clause, every provision, every exit condition. There was one section I made Bellamy highlight for me. Personal guarantor maintains unilateral right to withdraw from agreement with 72 hours written notice. Why are you flagging that? Bellamy asked. Insurance, I said. I didn't tell her what I really meant. I didn't tell her I was marking my exit door before I even walked into the building. When the facility went through, Caspian's firm had breathing room for the first time in a year. I consolidated all their scattered debts, negotiated better terms with their creditors, and restructured their investment approach to focus on sustainable growth instead of desperate gambles. Within 3 months, clients stopped leaving. Within 6 months, we started attracting new ones. Within a year, the firm was profitable again. Caspian told everyone he'd turn the company around through visionary leadership. I watched him give interviews where he talked about his strategic pivot, his market insights, his ability to weather storms. He never mentioned my name. Not once. At first, I told myself it didn't matter. I had my equity. I had my authority over financial operations. I had the satisfaction of knowing the work was solid. But then the board meetings started. There were 8 board members, all men, all old friends of Caspian's family or early investors who'd bought in when the company was just an idea. I wasn't invited to board meetings. Your operations, Caspian explained when I asked. Board meetings are for strategic oversight. You handle the execution. Execution. Like I was just following orders instead of designing the entire system. I let it go. Told myself titles didn't matter. Then the annual retreat came up. Every year, the board spent a long weekend at a resort in the mountains. They discussed strategy, approved budgets, made decisions about the firm's direction. Every executive attended, the chief investment officer, the head of client relations, even the marketing director. I assumed I'd be going. I'd prepared a presentation about expanding into a new market sector. I'd spent 4 months analyzing opportunities, building financial models, stress testing every scenario. The expansion would require extending our credit facility by another $700,000. I'd already done the preliminary work with Bellamy, confirming the trust could support it. 3 days before the retreat, I still hadn't received the travel details. I messaged Caspian's assistant. She responded with a confusing non-answer about still finalizing the attendee list. I went directly to Caspian's office. He was on the phone, but waved me in. Finished his call with a laugh that sounded practiced. Pharaoh, what can I do for you? The retreat. I haven't received the travel information. His expression shifted, just slightly, a microscopic tightening around his eyes. Right, about that. He stood, walked to the window, kept his back to me. I've been thinking about the attendee composition this year. We're trying to keep it focused. Core leadership only. I manage all financial operations. And you do it brilliantly. But the retreat is really about board relationships, investor relations, high-level strategy. The expansion proposal is high-level strategy. I'll present that for you. You've done excellent work on it. Something in my chest went very quiet. You'll present my work. Our work. This is a team effort. He turned back, gave me a smile that probably worked on clients. You're invaluable, Pharaoh. But not everything requires your direct involvement. I left his office without responding, went back to my workspace, and tried to focus on the quarterly reports that needed finishing. That night, at 9:43, the message came through. You're not board material. Stay home. I read it in my apartment, still wearing my work clothes, surrounded by papers covered in my handwriting, my analysis, my projections. Stay home. Like I was a child being excluded from adult conversations. Like I hadn't personally guaranteed the money that kept his company alive. I sat there for 27 minutes, not moving, not thinking, just existing in the moment where everything crystallized. Then I picked up my phone and typed my response. Understood. My hands were perfectly steady. I opened my banking app, pulled up Bellamy's direct line. It was nearly 10:30, but Bellamy answered on the second ring. Pharaoh, I need to invoke the withdrawal clause on the credit facility. Silence. Tonight? Yes. Can I ask why? Because I'm done being invisible. More silence. Then, I'll start the paperwork. You're certain? Completely. This will freeze the facility within 48 hours. They'll have 72 to secure alternative collateral, or they default. I know, Pharaoh, your grandmother, would tell me never to let anyone treat me as disposable. Process it, Bellamy. I heard her typing. Done. Official notice will be filed at market open tomorrow. They'll receive notification by 10 a.m. Thank you. I hung up. Then I did something I hadn't done in 3 years. I turned off my phone, made chamomile tea, and sat by my window watching the city lights blur into abstract patterns. For the first time in longer than I could remember, my shoulders weren't tight. My jaw wasn't clenched. I felt weightless. The next morning, I slept until 9. Made breakfast, did yoga, read 3 chapters of a novel I'd started 8 months ago and never finished. At 2 p.m., I turned my phone back on. The screen exploded with notifications, 68 missed calls, 42 voicemails, 109 text messages. I scrolled through them slowly, like reading a story about someone else's catastrophe. The financial controller, emergency, call immediately. The chief investment officer, what's happening with the credit facility? 3 messages from board members I'd never heard from before, and 17 from Caspian. The most recent one, sent 40 minutes ago. Pharaoh, whatever I did, we can fix this. Please call me. I deleted all of them without listening to the voicemails. Then I got dressed and drove to the office. Security looked confused when I walked in. The guard, whose name was Terrence, actually stood up from his desk. Miss Pharaoh, I thought you were. I didn't see you on today's access list. I'm just collecting some personal items, I said. He hesitated, then nodded. They'd removed me from the retreat attendance, but hadn't thought to revoke my building credentials. Amateur hour. I took the elevator to the 7th floor. The offices were mostly empty. Everyone important was at the retreat, discovering that their financial foundation had just evaporated. I walked through the space I'd inhabited for 3 years, past the workstations, where I'd spent countless nights rebuilding their systems, past the meeting rooms where I'd explained concepts to people who nodded like they understood but clearly didn't. My workspace was exactly as I'd left it, organized, efficient, impersonal except for one thing. On the shelf above my computer sat a photograph of my grandmother, taken when she was 65, standing in front of her textile mill. She wasn't smiling. She looked directly at the camera with absolute certainty about who she was and what she'd built. I took the photograph, left everything else. As I walked back toward the elevator, I heard shouting from the conference room. Multiple voices, overlapping, panicked. I paused outside the door. Can't just freeze the entire facility. Need alternative collateral by Monday or we default. Where is Pharaoh? Someone get Pharaoh on the phone. I kept walking. My phone rang as I reached my car. Caspian. I let it ring 4 times before answering. Pharaoh. His voice was ragged. Thank God. Where are you? Leaving the office. You need to come to the retreat. Right now. We have a situation. I'm not board material, remember? I should stay home. This isn't the time for, look, something happened with the credit facility. The bank is saying you withdrew your guarantee? That's correct. Dead silence. You can't just do that. I can. Clause 17, Section 3, personal guarantor maintains unilateral withdrawal rights with 72 hours notice. Pharaoh, he said my name like he was trying to calm a dangerous animal. You're upset. I understand. The message last night was poorly worded, but you can't tank the entire company over. Over being told I'm not board material? It came out wrong. Did it? I leaned against my car, watching clouds move across the sky. Or did it come out exactly right? Did it finally say what you've been communicating for 3 years without the courtesy of words? That's not fair. Fair? You want to discuss fairness? My voice stayed level, calm. Let's discuss how I rebuilt your company's entire financial infrastructure while you collected awards. Let's discuss how I personally guaranteed $1.5 million of debt using my family's trust while you told investors about your visionary leadership. Let's discuss how I spent 4 months developing an expansion strategy that you were planning to present as your own work to a board retreat I wasn't invited to attend. I was going to credit you, the way you've credited me for everything else. I heard other voices in the background, someone saying his name urgently. Hold on, Caspian said. Not to me. Then back to me. Pharaoh, I have the entire board here. The financial controller just confirmed that without your guarantee, the bank is freezing our facility. We have 48 hours to secure alternative collateral, or we default on $1.2 million in drawn funds. Sounds like you have a problem. This is your company too. You have equity. 5% equity in a company that's about to default. Yes, I've done the math. I'll lose approximately $73,000 in theoretical value. You'll lose everything. Silence. Long enough that I thought he might have hung up. Then, what do you want? Nothing. Everyone wants something. You want board access? You're on the board. You want a better title? Name it. You want more equity? We can restructure. Caspian. I cut him off. You're not listening. I don't want anything from you. I wanted basic respect. I wanted recognition for the work I did. I wanted to be treated like I mattered. You had 3 years to offer any of those things. You chose not to. So, now I'm choosing to. This is insane. You're destroying the company over your ego? I laughed. Actually laughed. My ego? That's extraordinary coming from someone who spent 3 years accepting applause for work he didn't do. If this facility defaults, it ruins both of us. No, it ruins you. My grandmother's trust is protected. The withdrawal clause is clear. I'm released from all liability the moment I filed notice. The bank confirmed it this morning. You planned this. His voice changed. Harder. You've been planning this. I planned for the possibility that you'd eventually reveal who you actually are. Turns out I was right. Pharaoh, please. The hardness cracked. I made a mistake. One message. You can't end everything over one message. It wasn't one message. It was 3 years of messages. Last night was just the only one you bothered to type out. I heard someone in the background say something about emergency board votes. I have to go, Caspian said. But this conversation isn't over. We're going to fix this. No, I said quietly. We're not, because there is no we. There never was. I hung up, drove home through afternoon traffic, listening to a podcast about marine biology, something completely unrelated to finance, to business, to any of it. My phone kept buzzing. I turned off the sound. At home, I made dinner. Actual dinner, with vegetables and protein and grains, instead of the takeout containers that had filled my recycling for 3 years. I ate slowly, tasting everything. Then I opened my laptop and checked my email. 3 messages had arrived in the past 2 hours. The first was from Bellamy. Withdrawal processed. You're officially released from the facility as of 5 p.m. today. Your grandmother would be proud. The second was from a headhunter I'd worked with years ago. Heard through the grapevine that you might be exploring new opportunities. Several of my clients would be very interested in speaking with you. The third was from someone named Vex. I didn't recognize the name, but the email signature identified him as CEO of a competing investment firm, one of the larger ones in the city. The message was brief. I've been watching your work for 2 years. We should talk, tomorrow, if you're available. I stared at that message for a long time. Then I replied, I'm available. The next morning, I woke up to 63 new missed calls. I made coffee, showered, dressed in clothes I actually liked instead of the armor I usually wore to the office. My phone rang. A number I didn't recognize. I answered. Is this Pharaoh? A woman's voice. Professional, but strained. Yes, this is Hollis. I'm on the board at Caspian's firm. We've never met, but I need to speak with you urgently. I'm listening. The credit facility situation. Caspian explained that there was a miscommunication, and you withdrew your guarantee in response. There was no miscommunication. I was told not to attend the board retreat because I'm not board material. I responded by removing myself from all involvement with the company. That seems extreme, does it? If I'm not qualified to attend a board retreat, why should I be qualified to personally guarantee $1.5 million in company debt? Silence. You make a fair point, Hollis said finally. But the company is facing default. Caspian says you're the only one who can fix this. Caspian is mistaken. He can fix this himself. He can use his personal assets as collateral. He can approach his family for guarantees. He can demonstrate the financial acumen he's been claiming to have for 7 years. His assets are already fully leveraged. His family won't. She stopped. We both know he can't secure this facility on his own. Then I guess he has a problem. Pharaoh, I'll be direct. I've reviewed your work. I know what you've built here. I know Caspian has taken credit for things you designed. But if the company defaults, a lot of people get hurt. Employees who had nothing to do with this. Clients who trusted us. That landed differently than I expected. I thought about the analysts who worked under me, the support staff, people just trying to do their jobs. The employees will find new positions, I said. Most of them are talented. The clients will recover their funds through the dissolution process. The FDIC insurance covers the deposits. And Caspian? Caspian will learn what happens when you treat people as disposable. Hollis sighed. For what it's worth, I agree that he's handled this appallingly. Several of us have tried to push for your inclusion in strategic decisions, but the board has dynamics, old relationships, family connections, people who owe Caspian favors or vice versa. It's not right, but it's reality. Then reality is about to change. Is there anything that would make you reconsider? I thought about it, actually thought about it. If Caspian resigns as CEO and the board offers me full operational control, I'll consider reinstating the guarantee. Hollis went quiet. You're asking for his complete removal. I'm answering your question about what it would take. That's what it would take. He founded this company. With family money and borrowed credibility, I rebuilt it with actual skill. Which of us is more essential? I need to discuss this with the other board members. You have 36 hours before the default becomes permanent. I hung up, met with Vex that afternoon. His office was in a building downtown, smaller than Caspian's but newer, more functional than flashy. Vex himself was younger than I expected, maybe 40, with an intensity that felt authentic rather than performed. I'm going to skip the small talk, he said, after we'd shaken hands. I know what's happening with your current situation. The whole industry knows by now. Word travels fast. When someone pulls the foundation out from under Caspian's company, yes, it travels fast. He leaned forward. I've been trying to recruit you for 18 months. You never returned my calls. I was busy holding together a company that didn't appreciate it. So I gathered. Here's what I'm offering. Chief Financial Officer. Full authority over all financial operations and strategy. Seat on the board. Equity starting at 8%. And your name on everything you build. Why me? Because I've watched you restructure a failing company into a profitable one, while the CEO took victory laps. Because I've seen your work on the market analysis that Caspian presented as his own at last year's investor summit. Because I'm building something real here. And real things require people who can actually do the work. What's the catch? No catch. Just honesty. We're smaller than Caspian's firm. We don't have the flashy reputation yet. We don't throw parties or get featured in magazines. We focus on sustainable growth and actual returns. It's less glamorous. Glamour hasn't been working out well for me. He smiled. Is that a yes? It's an interest. I need to see your financial structure, your client base, your actual numbers. Fair. He slid a folder across the desk. Everything's in there. take your time, but the offer expires in 72 hours because I need someone in this role quickly. I took the folder home, read through it that night. Everything Vex had told me was accurate. Smaller operation, solid fundamentals, no debt beyond manageable credit lines, clean books, boring, in the best possible way. My phone rang at 11 p.m. Caspian. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. The board voted, he said without preamble. They're offering you Chief Operating Officer, board seat, 10% equity, full authority over financial operations and expansion strategy. And you? I remain as CEO, but you'd have equal voice in all strategic decisions. Not interested. Pharaoh, that's a significant. I told Hollis what it would take, full operational control. Your resignation. This company is my legacy. Then you should have treated it like one instead of using it as a stage for your ego. I built this from nothing. You built it from family money and other people's work, specifically my work. And now you're watching it collapse because you confused charisma with competence. His breathing was ragged. You're really going to do this? Destroy everything? I'm not destroying anything. I'm simply no longer holding it up. There's a difference. I'm begging you. Those 3 words hung between us. You had 3 years to make me feel valued, I said. You had 3 years to include me, credit me, respect me. You chose not to. Those choices have consequences. What if I resign? I paused. You'd actually do that? If it saves the company? Yes. The board would need to offer me CEO position, full authority, 5-year contract with performance incentives tied to company growth, not stock manipulation. I can recommend that. And you'd need to publicly acknowledge that the financial restructuring that saved this company was my work. Press release, investor memo, all of it. Silence. That humiliates me, he said finally. No, that's just honesty. Humiliation is being told, you're not board material after personally guaranteeing the debt that keeps the lights on. More silence. I'll talk to the board, he said. But I can't guarantee they'll agree. Then I guess we'll see how badly they want to avoid default. I hung up, didn't sleep well that night. Not from anxiety, from something else. Something that felt like watching a storm approach and knowing you're the one who called it. The next morning, Hollis called. The board has agreed to your terms. Caspian will resign effective immediately. You'll be offered the CEO position with the contract specifications you outlined. Caspian will issue a statement acknowledging your role in the company's restructuring. And the guarantee? We're asking you to reinstate it so we can avoid default while the transition happens. I thought about the employees, the analysts who'd worked late nights beside me, the support staff who kept everything running. I'll reinstate it on one condition. The company commits to transparent attribution of work going forward. Every presentation, every investor memo, every public statement credits the people who actually did the work. Agreed. Put it in writing. Send it to my attorney. I gave her the contact information. We need your answer today. You'll have it when I receive the signed documents. The documents arrived by courier at 3 p.m. I read every word. My attorney read every word. Everything was there. CEO, position, authority, contract terms, the acknowledgement clause. I signed. Then I called Bellamy. I'm reinstating the guarantee. Same terms as before, but with a modification. I want the facility in my name with the company as the borrower. Not a personal guarantee, a facility I control. That changes the structure significantly. I know. Can it be done? If the company agrees to subordinate their rights to yours. Yes, they'll agree. They did. By 6 p.m., the new facility was in place. The company was saved from default. I was the CEO, and Caspian was gone. The press release went out the next morning. After 7 years of leadership, founder Caspian is stepping down as CEO. The board has appointed Pharaoh as his successor. Caspian wishes to acknowledge that the financial restructuring, credited with saving the company during its critical period 3 years ago, was designed and implemented by Pharaoh, whose strategic vision and personal financial commitment provided the foundation for the company's current stability. My phone exploded with messages, reporters wanting interviews, industry contacts wanting to congratulate me, competitors wanting to know if I was hiring, and one message from Caspian. I hope you're happy. I didn't respond. 3 weeks later, I was sitting in what used to be Caspian's office. reviewing the expansion proposal I'd developed. The board, my board now, had approved it unanimously. We were extending into the new market sector, carefully, sustainably, with proper risk assessment and contingency planning. Vex had called to congratulate me and to say the offer still stood if things didn't work out. I think I'm where I need to be, I told him. Fair enough, but if you ever want to talk about partnerships between our firms, I'm listening. I'll keep that in mind. The company stabilized over the following months. Several of Caspian's board allies quietly resigned. New members came in, people with actual expertise rather than just personal connections. The employees responded to the change with what looked like relief. Productivity increased. Turnover decreased. We started winning new clients based on performance rather than charm. 6 months after taking over, I received an envelope at my office. No return address, just my name written in familiar handwriting. Inside was a single sheet of paper. You were right, about all of it. I spent 7 years building something I didn't understand on foundations I didn't create. I thought leadership meant being the face of things. I didn't realize it meant being the structure underneath. I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted you to know that I finally understand what I lost. Not just the company, the chance to learn from someone who actually knew what they were doing. I hope you build something extraordinary. Caspian. I read it twice, then I filed it away and went back to work. A year after becoming CEO, I stood in front of an investor conference, presenting our annual returns. 32% growth, client retention at 94%, expansion into 3 new market sectors. After the presentation, a young woman approached me, mid-20s, nervous energy. Miss Farrow, I'm Coral. I just finished my MBA, and I've been following your work. The way you restructured your company's financial model is exactly what I wrote my thesis on. Did you now? Yes, and I was wondering. I know this is incredibly forward, but are you hiring? I'd work in any capacity. I just want to learn from someone who builds things the right way. I looked at her, saw something familiar in her expression. Hunger mixed with competence. Ambition tempered by actual skill. Send me your resume, I said, and your thesis. I'll review them. Really? But I should tell you, if you work here, you'll get credit for what you do. Your name on your work, your voice in the strategy. But you'll also work harder than you've ever worked in your life. That's exactly what I want. She sent her materials that night. I hired her 2 weeks later. Watching her walk into the office on her first day, I thought about the message I'd received that started everything. You're not board material. Stay home. 7 words that were meant to diminish me. 7 words that instead freed me to rebuild everything on my own terms. Sometimes the worst thing someone can say to you becomes the best thing that ever happened. Not because it didn't hurt, but because it forced you to stop waiting for someone else's permission to claim your own value. I walked past Coral's workspace, where she was already deep in analysis, filling notebooks with calculations. You're here early, I said. She looked up, startled. I wanted to get a head start on the portfolio review. Good instinct. But pace yourself. This is a marathon, not a sprint. I will. Thank you, Miss Farrow. Call me Farrow. We don't do formalities here. We do work. She smiled. I went to my office, sat down, and looked at the photograph of my grandmother on my shelf. She still wasn't smiling in the picture, still looked directly at the camera with absolute certainty. I understood that expression now. It wasn't about happiness. It was about knowing exactly who you are and what you've built and not needing anyone else's validation to confirm it. My phone buzzed. A message from Hollis. Board meeting tomorrow at 9. Agenda. Q3 review and discussion of your proposal for the international expansion. Looking forward to hearing your thoughts. Your proposal, not our proposal that I'd have to watch someone else present. Mine. I typed back. I'll be there. Then I opened my laptop and got back to work, because that's what you do when you've stopped waiting for permission. You build, and you put your name on every single thing you create. Thank you for staying with this story all the way to the end. If you felt every moment of this journey, if you've ever been made invisible by someone who needed you to succeed, drop a comment below. Share your story. Tell me how you've reclaimed your value. And subscribe, because there are so many more stories of people who stopped accepting less than they deserved and started building something that's truly theirs. Your support means everything. Until next time.